Let me ask you a question. Do you believe in God? And if you do you have a testimony of why you believe in Him? Because I do. God is real. I know this for a fact because He spoke to me. I'm not crazy. I'm not delusional. I actually experienced a Christmas miracle. The kind of miracles they talk about in the Bible, except in present day time. So in 2018, I ended up having a freak accident in my very own bedroom. I didn't even have to leave my home for this. I was up on my bed and I was trying to blow out a candle on a really high shelf. And I had a lot of decorative pillows at the time, which, fun fact, I now don't have any decorative pillows on my bed. But back then I did. So I was up there on top of my bed trying to blow out this candle because I'm 5'2" and I could barely reach it. And I stumbled. I stumbled over one of these decorative pillows and I fell off of my bed. I fell kind of sideways, so on the way down I paralyzed my foot. I broke my ankle. I broke my 5th metatarsal bone and I bruised every single bone in my foot. And it was a freak accident. I don't know why it happened. I'm super clumsy, but that's what happened. So I got taken to the hospital, and at first they didn't catch that my foot was paralyzed. They told me, oh, it's just a really bad sprain. You'll get over it. Except I didn't. And I didn't feel my foot. It felt like it didn't exist anymore. It felt like it was on a faraway island that it just wasn't near me anymore. It wasn't my foot anymore. It wasn't my limb. So I went to appointment after appointment after appointment, and finally they realized that I have foot drop. And they said that the degree is total paralysis. They tried to shock my foot to see if my nerves would wake up, and they didn't. I tried physical therapy, even though my foot wouldn't move, and my physical therapist had to manually move my foot himself. And I was losing hope. I was bedbound. I was wheelchair bound. I was on crutches. I crawled all the way around my house. I'm like the world's fastest crawler now. And I was losing hope. But I never stopped praying. And every time I'd go to the doctors, they're like, yeah, you're never going to walk again without a mobility device, without a wheelchair. And they just wanted me to believe that this was going to be my life. And I refused to believe it because I'm a singer and I'm an actress and I have big dreams to chase. And I thought, God, this cannot be my life. Not for me, this can't. But even if it is, I told myself that I was still going to achieve my dreams, even in a wheelchair, even on a knee scooter, even crawling on my knees or on crutches. I told myself I'm going to work so hard to get there. And I thought I could be mad at God, or I could praise Him, or I could choose to pray instead of being angry. So that's what I did. For almost a year, I prayed every night to God, thanking Him for this experience because somehow He knew I must have needed it. Maybe He knew that I needed to fight for myself, or I needed to believe in something bigger. Because I always believed in God and I heard stories, but I've never lived one. Not until 2018. So for almost a year, I couldn't walk. And I did have a huge appointment coming up, and they were going to do an ultrasound on my foot and on the back of my knee to see if that nerve was even alive, because maybe if it was alive or if it was severed, they could do surgery and maybe potentially I could walk again. So I went into that hospital room and they did the ultrasound, and I'll never forget the look on that guy's face. He said, your nerve in the back of your leg is perfectly fine, which is amazing. That's great news. But the thing was, that means they couldn't do surgery because nothing was broken. And they even did x-rays on my back, thinking maybe the fall that I may have had a herniated disc or something. My back was completely fine. My doctors were so puzzled as to why I was paralyzed and why I will never regain movement. And I was so bummed because he said, I'm so sorry. There's nothing we can do. And I was so broken. This was on 12/12/2018. I was so broken. I remember my mom and my brother wanted to go out to eat at McDonald's and to go shopping, and they were trying to keep my mind off of it, but I kept thinking, oh my gosh, I'm actually going to be paralyzed for the rest of my life, Like, that's when it finally sunk into me. And instead of being mad, I said, you know what, God? Apparently you think I'm strong enough to live this life, so be it. I'll live this life. But I'm not going to give up, and I will walk again one day. So later that night, I tried to smile for most of the day for my family, but I was breaking inside. What do you do with that kind of information? So I went to take a bath, crawled on my hands and knees over the tub, got in the bath as I did nightly, and I just cried. I cried, I talked to God in the bathtub. I was just thinking, why me? And he was like, why not you? So I'm just sitting there talking to God, and all of a sudden, I heard this huge booming voice in my head. And he said, move your foot 3 times. And I looked around and I thought, where did that voice come from? I thought I was finally losing it. I thought, okay, Requin, you're going to the Ludi bin next because you just heard a huge voice. But I heard it again, and it was loud, and it was demanding, and it sent chills down my back, down my arms. I knew it was God. And I looked at my foot that couldn't move, and I was thinking, yeah, you want me to move my foot, but how do I move my foot? And he said it for a 3rd time. Move your foot 3 times. So as I looked down at my foot, meanwhile my foot is crooked because it's paralyzed, so it's kind of like this. No movement, completely limp. I kept trying to send the signals from my brain to my foot, being like, okay, this loud booming voice wants me to move my foot. Like, I've tried a million times to do it this whole year and nothing happened, but I'll try one more time. So I looked down at my foot and I said, move, just move. And nothing happened. And I was like, okay, I really am crazy. But I tried again. So I was like, okay, move, foot, move. And I saw a little flicker of movement, but I thought, maybe I can't believe my eyes, maybe it's all in my head. And I did it the 3rd time, and do you know what? My big toe moved. And then the rest of my foot moved. And it went all the way up. And I could not believe my eyes. I'm just sitting in bubbles, looking at my foot, saying, oh my gosh, that didn't just happen. The doctor said it was impossible. They told me that I was going to be wheelchair bound for the rest of my life, and my foot just moved randomly on 12/12/18, right after a doctor's appointment that told me that I was never going to walk again. There was no hope. And my foot moved that night. I was in complete disbelief. I was so grateful. I started shrieking and screaming and crying, like ugly crying. And I crawled out of the bathtub and I went and showed my mom and my brother at the time. And then they started crying, ugly crying. They started screaming, they started cheering. And my mom filmed my foot moving up. It wasn't perfect, and it was still really stiff, and it was still kind of limp. But there was hope. There was movement. And I knew that was God. I knew that I heard God that night. And I knew He had to have me live this testimony so I could share with other people. So I want you to know, whatever you're going through in your life, and you feel like you have no hope, I want to tell you, trust in God. Pray to Him. Talk to Him. He's your friend. And even though I had to go through a year of trials and tribulation, it made me a stronger person at the end of it. So 12/12 isn't an ordinary day for me. It's the day that God granted me a miracle. And every single step I have taken this far, I have done it for God. And I want to live for Him. I want to live for you. And I truly hope that my testimony, my story, will touch you in ways that God hasn't yet. He has a purpose for you. And He has a purpose for me. And I don't ever want you to give up. If you are ever feeling down, I hope you look up the Bible. The Bible quote, Romans 12:12. It is my favorite. I live by it. I love you guys.